I looked at the institutions where my children were going to learn religion. I'll be really honest, I couldn't trust them. And that's how Workshop was born. There was a lot of male chauvinism going on. For a woman to stand up and say something that challenged the norm of society, that wasn't acceptable. It was quite difficult.
To change people's behaviors, it takes time.
Well, you were just telling me that you forged friendships in Workshop. To actually be there amongst Ahlul Baytis, that's enough.
Talk to me about this Q City.
Quran was a memorization process. I thought, well, why can't I make 114 buildings?
You've actually used neurolinguistic programming.
The children now know not only the names of all the surah, they also know the key concepts of each one.
You said in a majlis, go and give them a gift.
If they talk about you, go and give them something, because on the day of Qiyamah, that just robs out everything. We have a phenomenal community. And Mulaskar always used to tell me, it is the challengers and the talkers who make the workers work.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to the KHOJA Connection podcast, Growing Through Conversations. And I am your host, Doureine Hiridjee. And today we have a very special guest. She needs no introduction, but I will still give a little introduction because she's that amazing. She is a lifelong servant of our community here at Hujjat Stanmore. She's a faith leader. She's a respected lecturer. She's the head of so many organizations. I will let her talk about some of them because I won't do justice in this introduction, but she's the head of Workshop. It's a community center for children, the Q City, Q Fatima, and so many other initiatives that she has going, alhamdulillah. And honestly, I am so honored. Umyanti, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for giving me your time today and for being here today at the KHOJA Connection podcast.
Awesome to be here. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I don't think I deserve any of that. I'm simply a glorified microphone and a glorified keyboard. Behind me, there's so many people. I just speak for them. One of them is you, by the way.
Aww.
So literally, it's just being glorified keyboard and microphone. I'm embarrassed. So.
No, honestly, I just wanted to say that my first encounter of you actually was about, I think, 24 years ago in 2000. I moved from Madagascar to London, and we used to live in central London. And my mom was taking us every Saturday to Workshop, which actually at the time, it was one of the only places to gain knowledge for adults, even because there was classes for adults. Right. You were one of them. There was Muhaddis Auntie, there was Amina Auntie, so many amazing speakers that you had. And for me, I must say, that changed my life. It was transformative in so many ways. The mindsets, the sort of, the things that you brought to the table for ladies at the time was amazing. The friendships I created at the time as well. And you don't realize this, but indirectly, you've brought so much to my life. So I want to start by thanking you for that because it's unique. It's unique in its kind.
I'm overwhelmed.
It's the truth. And, so that for me was, and I was actually very intimidated by you because, the aura that you had, for me, it was amazing because you're such a role model to so many ladies. And I just want the viewers to know who Ummulbanin Merali is. Can you give us a picture of who you are?
If I were to describe who I am, I'm basically a KHOJA Shia Ethna mother of 5 awesome young people. But let me start right at the beginning. I think the foundation was held by my parents. My father in particular had a major effect on my life. I was 10 when he died. But in those 10 formative years, he changed who I was. he didn't impose anything. So my father was a muazzin, a very successful businessman, and also the muazzin of the local mosque, as in what he did. He built the mosque. Every time he went away, he used to travel a lot for business. But whenever he went and he came back, all he thought about was new stuff for the center. So that was a love of the center that was put into it. The Quran, in essence, I still remember the day when one of my cousins, older cousins, was there, and I was sitting as a bystander. I must have been 7 or 8. Remember, I'm 65 now, so it must be a memory that's really etched into my mind. And he told her, "Can I have a look at your Quran?" And then he looked at it and he said, "That's your Quran? Doesn't look like it's been read. It's like new." And she said, "Well, I look after it." And I remember running up to my room, taking my Quran and trying to turn the pages and fold them and make sure it was looked through. And I said, "Baba, look, this is my Quran." And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, "I hope it stays that way." So that was the love of the Quran. And the love of the Ahlul Bayt was just phenomenal. That the whole house was just that. So in essence, that was me as such. I got married at 16. Or 17. I got engaged at 16 and married at 17 to an absolutely phenomenal man. I mean, sorry about this, I know you don't want to talk about him, but if I were to skin myself alive and let him make a shirt out of it for 2 moments, I wouldn't be enough. So it's this man who encouraged me to do what I wanted. Now, when I had children and I looked at the institutions where my children were going to learn religion, I'll be really honest, I couldn't trust them. I couldn't get my children into places which would make them learn dogmatic religion. And that's how Workshop was born. So Workshop was really born in 1991. I used to teach at Sunday Madrasa. I used to live in Chelmsford. We used to come all the way down. And my husband used to wait in the car while I went and taught. And one of the most phenomenal headmasters there was Takim, Mr. Takim. I don't know whether you know him, Abdul Hussain Takim. He was phenomenal. And he had a different vision, but the community wouldn't let him get through his vision. It was quite difficult. And Workshop started on the 9th of January, 1991. 4 teachers, 40 students. Marhum Ahmad Dungarsi as a phenomenal man, because I went up to him shaking, like you said, you were in awe, I was in awe of him. And I went up and I said, "Excuse me, we want to start something." And he said, "Get me 100 signatures." And we did. But that it sort of grew up from there. There are many reasons. That was one reason. The other reason was we used to have, after school, we used to have 3 days a week. We used to teach Quran at Stanmore. So there was me, there was Shamim Panju, and we used to teach Quran there. And it grew. So many people, because we started at home, moved to the mosque, but it still grew. And I think the defining thing of starting Workshop, besides not trusting my children anywhere, was this young lady who came up and said, "It's Mi'raj tomorrow. What is Mi'raj?" And my instinct was, you know what, we've got so many children to read Quran, go and ask your madrasa teacher. And she came back the next week and she said, the madrasa teacher said it's not in the syllabus. It'll be in the syllabus in year 7. And that enraged me, because to me, she needed to know tomorrow what was going to happen. And that was why I went to Ahmad Dungarsi and we started this. And then we started Q Calendar. And then the rest is history.
Wow.
It moved, it went. That's where we are now.
I mean, it's now in so many countries, and I know you've also got it in different languages as well. Right. French, I think, being one of them.
And Gujarati.
And Gujarati, absolutely. And I mean, Q, where does Q come from?
Q stands from Quran. I think everything emanates from the Quran. I have, and I can't say we are a phenomenal group of teachers. The teachers that I have are, I don't think you can find any of those teachers. So to be able to transition them from the predominantly cultural fiqh, akhlaq, tariq, Quran, to change them into having a sort of a view where you'd start with the Quran as your base and then move along all the other subjects was difficult, but they stuck by me, and kudos to them. Kudos to them.
I mean, there must have been something in the leader.
I don't think so. I think it was them. And they humored me.
Oh.
There were times when things went dreadfully wrong, but they still humored me. But we transitioned, and that was Q. That's where Q comes from.
That's beautiful. I actually didn't know Q came from that, so that's really informative. I want to go back a little bit on your story about your formative years, and I actually hear you a lot talk about your beloved father on the mimbar, or when you're giving majlises. That is amazing to see that you've actually, he's still alive.
Oh, definitely.
I can see it, I can hear it, and I can feel it when you're talking about him. And it's amazing how those formative years have actually built you who you are today, and how he's continuing through you.
My father was 37 when he died of a penicillin injection reaction. But I very, very, very clearly remember the day when my uncle, that was his brother, died in an accident. And he was sitting with my grandmother. And my grandmother said, his name was Ghulam Abbas. And my grandmother said, Ghulam Abbas, you will never die. And he said, how so? Everybody dies. Kullu nafsin za'iqatul maut. And my grandmother said, but you are a muazzin. And the Prophet said, one who gives adhan never dies. And I remember sitting there and looking at my father and think, oh my goodness, you're immortal. Because that's what my grandmother said, you're immortal. I didn't realize that even in that short period of life that he had, he lived because of the way he raised us.
Wow. Well, that just shows how impactful it is when you're raising your child, and the impression and that you leave in the minds of the children, alhamdulillah. And then you mentioned your big support, which, you mentioned your husband, alhamdulillah. I can echo that, because I have the same sort of setup, alhamdulillah. My husband is very supportive, so I can completely resonate with that. And it's amazing because you can be the leader that you want when you have the support that you need. So kudos to that, alhamdulillah. Sounds like a really amazing relationship. So 1991, I was just looking at some of the things that you've sent to me. There's a lot happening. It all started in 1991.
Well, before that, we had the senior citizens. So we started that on a Wednesday, because Sheikh Tusi says what you start on a Wednesday will never end. So there was me and Fatma Birani, Ma Daramsi, I don't know whether you know her, and Ma Datu. We were downstairs in the basement, and that's how we started Wednesday Senior Citizens. And today when I look at it, I think, oh my goodness, it's phenomenal.
It's taken a whole
it's life of its own. Then we had summer camp, and the Interfaith Network has been phenomenal. I'm still part of that. I've moved out a little bit because of the conflict that's going on at the moment in the world, and I really don't want to get engaged in a conflict with those who I respect very much. So, but those were all part pre-1991. 1991 was just a sort of a start of an institution at Stanmore. Didn't come easy. Didn't come easy. Nothing comes easy, especially when you're giving birth to such an amazing concept. Never thought it was there.
It comes with pain. How did you manage those painful moments?
I don't think, well, okay, maybe you could call it painful. I think we come from a society that was very culturally traditional, and therefore there was a lot of male chauvinism going on. So for a woman to stand up and say something that challenged the norm of society, that wasn't acceptable. It was quite difficult. And there were many things. I mean, you'd have your car scratched, you'd have, I remember once walking into the center, and I can't even say what was written on each of those boards. And you sort of looked at it, and if there weren't people like Mohsin Daramsi, for example, or Marhumullah Askar, I don't think you could have survived it. So you need that backup in the center as well, who sort of said, is it the same for you to swim in the sea or swim in the swimming pool? It's not the same. So you've got to, if you want to move this, you have to do it. So those challenges were difficult in the sense they were painful, because you knew as moms you were right. That's how you wanted to raise your children. And these people were dogmatic. I understand where they came from, because they didn't want to change the fabric of society. They wanted to keep the old. They didn't want to go with the change of time. So I understand their resistance. But sometimes, and I say this quite, sometimes resistance becomes difficult, painful. To be mean is not resistance.
Yeah, I think it's every now and again there's this, I was looking at something called a change curve, and how the change curve has all these kind of waves going from shock to denial to depression to kind of, different, and then finally you've got, acceptance. I'm just looking at it right now, it's experiment, decision, integration, problem solving. So it's a whole journey in itself. It's hard for people to even fathom change because it's outside of their comfort zone.
But I think what we need to learn going ahead is change does not mean to ostracize people. I still remember walking into the mosque and then listening from the microphone stuff like, oh, she's walked in, the one who's tearing our society apart, because you're taking the children out from where they were used to sitting and teaching them in a language they understand. So we started those children's classes, the girls' classes and the boys' classes. They wouldn't send us the Tabarruk, for example, because that was not what they... And I get it. They think you're trying to separate a mother from her child, but you're not. And that, like I said, change was difficult for them. Change came with a lot... to stick by that needed a lot of support. So,
you mentioned that, moving from the dogmatic way of educating to a more loving way, a more sort of understandable. And what I love about the way that you operate is you really break it down to very simple language. And even for adults, even in the adult classes that I've sat, or majlises that I've sat in, you've made it really sort of digestible. And how did you come up with that? Well,
first of all, I'm not a scholar. Not at all. So I'm simply a mother. That's all I am. And to me, the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt and the community are three very important factors. To me, to go away and study at a hawza was a luxury. You'd have to leave all your responsibilities. So as a mom, you had to learn how to teach your children first what life was all about. It's about reaching your full potential. And the only way I could do it was by studying the life of the Ahlul Bayt, especially the life of the Prophet. And his life revolved around TTC, which was being trustworthy, truthful, and compassionate. And to me, the Quran only describes him as Rahmatul lil Alameen, compassion. And I think if you teach anything without compassion, you're not going to get anywhere. You cannot.
So why are there people out there who what you seem to have come up with, which makes sense. It's just so logical in every single way. Why do you think people are holding on to these kind of black and white type of?
I think it's also how you were brought up. I think there's a genealogy behind it as well. I think sometimes you think imposition helps. I'll give you an example. It's probably a gross example, but say brushing your teeth. If I were to tell my child, you have to brush your teeth for 2 minutes, and I stand there, or you have to pray, for example, let's get that, and you stand there and you watch them, that prayer is not going to be a child's prayer. But if you allow them, buy them a device that will attract them to the 2 minutes that makes a beautiful noise or whatever, you allow them their space, I think it works. And these people, I think, maybe have been raised by imposition. And maybe I don't want to look back, see them as bad. I think they want you to go to Jannah.
Of course.
The
intention's always amazing.
Yeah. I think they want you to go to Jannah by any possible way. And to them, the only way they know is imposition. But now at 65 and looking back, I don't think imposition has ever worked. I was raised without imposition. I was raised in a household where everybody recited majlis, but there was never an imposition. So I think it's how you were raised that makes
absolutely.
a difference.
And I think it's very, very true that everyone out there has the best of intentions. They all want to teach, they all want to impart knowledge, they all want you to go on the right path. But yes, you're right, it does depend on the upbringing and the programming that's happened. And to change people's behaviors, reactions, it takes time. It's not an easy journey. And I think every human being has gone through that journey and needs to, we were just talking about it earlier, needs to go through the journey. And imposition feels like maybe you're stopped from that journey in some way or the other.
I think you're bound to react if you're imposed on. And I think you need to be in somebody's shoes to understand what they're going through. I think whether we're looking at workshop or madrasa or any of those institutions where children are concerned, I've said this to the teachers all the time. First of all, there cannot be any tests on religion, because I remember once teaching, and I've taught at many madrasas from Nairobi to wherever it might be. So I remember one of the children getting a first prize in akhlaq, and that's quite a big thing. And as we were walking out of this institution, I had boxes in my hand. I had a baby in my hand. She slammed the door. She didn't even keep the door open. I'm not saying she did it purposely. She just didn't realize. But to me, that was a turning point. If you got first in akhlaq, surely it meant that the khulq, the behavior has changed. But that was only Google. She could only rejuvenate or regurgitate whatever was to write it down. So that changed. So I don't think they should go through exams. And I keep on telling the teachers that even if you were to test them, it's a testing you to see what you manage to get from your heart to their heart. It's not testing children. You can't test children. I mean, where does that come from?
Yeah.
So I think that whole concept, and I still feel that all these institutions, whether it is the community, and it's awesome to see that, the very fact that you actually get there and get together with people. You were just telling me that you forged friendships in workshop.
Yeah.
So to actually be there amongst Ahlul Baytis, to sit on the same farsh, that's enough. It's really enough. And it riles me when I'm sitting there and then suddenly you're told, you can't sit here, you can't sit there, you can't do this, you can't do that. I remember being told at the Baruch time that I was talking. Oh, really? It's that sort of whatever. So
yeah, I guess it's moving from that tick box exercise to really applying it in practice. Because yes, you're right. Knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is where the freedom element comes, where you feel absolutely, basically you're walking and talking the talk, basically. So for you, how did you deal? So, you go through challenges, you go through these negativity, it affects you, but then you do rise above that. At some point you realize that the wave is going to turn and it's turning. How did you what did you have to change in yourself for that to happen?
I was a spoilt brat when I was growing up. My father spoiled me immensely. When he died, you learned that you had to fend for yourself. So that was something that you went through. But the challenges, I think if at the end of the day, you can stand on your musalla, put your hand on your heart and say, I did my best. And you look at it and you say, if there was anything wrong I did, I will go and apologize. But I did my best. Then that's not, it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't do anything. But that was something my father taught me again. And sometimes it was hard. Sometimes it needed to pick up the phone and tell a person whom I'd probably shouted at and say, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to, but I may have come across as aggressive, but this was my reason. And 99% of people understand if you're able to tell them what it's all about. We have a phenomenal community, and I mean phenomenal community. And Mulaskar always used to tell me that it is the challengers and the talkers who make the workers work.
Wow.
It is the challengers and those people who make you think, want you to do more. And he was right. If they didn't challenge me, if they weren't there, I'd have become, I don't know.
I love how you're looking at life. I must say, it's always amazing to talk to somebody who sees silver lining, because, like you said, challenges are going to come. But when you're able to see that it's actually those people that have actually enabled you to become who you are today and to actually rise above, I mean, that's mission accomplished.
They're the first people on Shab. On your list for namaz tahajjud or salatul ayat, whatever you call it, they're the first people there. Because had it not been for them, I don't think it'd have the strength to push.
Yeah. I think at some point you said in a majlis, go and give them a gift or something.
Yes.
Put a gift outside their house.
My mother used to say that. My mother used to say,
I love that.
If they talk about you, go and give them something, because on the day of Qiyamah, that just robs out everything. And I think, real ma?
That's really a nice picture to have in your mind.
It's absolutely right.
And actually, one of the things you just said is something that I wasn't understanding it. When you're a teenager or so, a young woman going through life, when you were saying do your best, it's something that really stuck with me. As long as you can say I did my best. But now I get it, because again, we're going back to the same thing. It's that journey. Maybe my best is different then and my best is different today, and it keeps improving. So I always tell my kids the same thing. Thanks to you, just as long as you can say you've done your best. Alhamdulillah, that's amazing. Thank you for that. So talk to me about this Q City. I'm actually really, amazed at how you came up with that.
So Quran City was, we were teaching at workshop, and you suddenly found that the only thing that children could learn through was images. Otherwise, Quran was a memorization process. And when you looked at history, that's what the Arabs did. They were good at memorizing poetry and whatever. And you didn't want them. You wanted to understand the book. Basically because it said, ذَلْكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's a guidance for those who are God conscious. So you had to come up with something that would enable them to understand. I saw teachers making Noah's Ark, and it was only the things that were tangible they could do, and that really was just stories of the prophets. They learned from it, but not enough. So one day I was sitting I have a shed, as most people do, sitting in this shed, and I was surrounded by the old toys that my children had, and part of it was Lego. This was 2013, I think, and I was sitting there, and I thought, I don't know what made me think. And I thought, well, why can't I make 114 buildings? So I made 114 buildings, and I looked at them and I thought, oh my goodness me, that's cool. I got to learn these now. And then I went through the morphology of Medina, how the Prophet created Medina. And that was a book that was that thick. So how he had, for example, the industries were all far away, the roads were wide, how he made the city. He put all the markets around the mosque. So when people came to the mosque every day to pray, they would be there. And he created this thing. And obviously, at the side of the shed was this little camel that I had called Kaswa. I used to call it Kaswa because my father called it Kaswa. So I had Kaswa as my teddy, as you might want to call it, a little camel. And it just came together. And the first place we demonstrated it at, besides workshop, was in Dar es Salaam when I went there. And the enthusiasm with which they learned was good. So then I built a Quran city in Lego, and I left it in the corridor at workshop. I didn't say a word. I mean, the teachers, my children, they all thought, oh God, she's going through the menopause. She's had it now. Now she's playing with toys. It's okay. It's okay. So I left it in the middle of the corridor. And the children kept on asking, why is there a helicopter? And this was Isra. Why is there a throne? And this was the throne of Bilqis, and so on and so forth. And what is this? And you suddenly found that from the adult class that you talk about, from the 90-year-olds to the 3.5-year-olds that we take, suddenly they all wanted to learn more. And you don't know the joy I felt. I mean, I had a spring in my step. I thought, oh my goodness. I went to every Lego store in London because you had to have specific bricks. I went through eBay to find out whether to get, and I made my husband take a loan so I could have £10,000 worth of Lego in the house. And then we got all the teachers together and we built it. The rest is history. It built. And what happened was the children now know not only the names of all the surah, they also know the key concepts of each one. And then you just want them to explore. So with Kaswa, they would explore it. So Quran City actually began in a shed and then just moved up to where it is now. We finished the book now. It's called Quran City. So every single building, everything is done now.
So what's next for Quran City?
I believe Quran City has 17 gates. But I've increased that to 51 now, which is the 51 rakats of Salah, which include the Nafila and the Tahajjud. Quran City has lights, obviously, street lights, and there's 99 of those. So we finished Asma al-Husna. The next project is doing S51, which is the 51 rakats of Salah. And I believe that's quite important to put them in. 17 will be the main gates, and then the other gates will be additional. And then we'll build the whole city with all that. But it's,
it's fascinating. I love how your mind works, because it feels to me that just as you're learning, you're sharing as well. And through that sharing, you learn even more.
I think so. I think I don't know much. I'm simply a mother, remember?
No, but the mothers have
and now I'm a grandma.
Yeah, grandma.
I love it. And the most I've learned from is from my eldest granddaughter. She's got severe cerebral palsy. So she cannot sit, she cannot stand, she cannot hold her head, she cannot talk. But she talks through her eyes. And she will raise her hands for yes and no. And her device teaches her. She can talk through her device, but a sentence takes her a good half an hour. And I loved it because a few days ago, my daughter called me and said, Mama, you know what she did? And I'm thinking, what? She said, she told the school, I am a Muslim. Now, to me, that's just phenomenal. And to say, Nani will teach me about Islam, or Quran City, or Nani will help me do that. And that's a further, I don't know, it's inspiration, isn't it? She's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And that's what, I think that's what inspires you to want to do something that's easy. That, religion was never meant to be difficult.
Exactly.
You were meant to be able to do everything because you loved God, because you loved reaching your full potential, because you wanted to be your best, as you say it. You don't want to do it because somebody says it, And for Sophia, who doesn't need to do anything, I mean, she's Ahlul Jannah, straight out. But for her to say, I'm a Muslim and I want to learn Quran, oh my goodness. You don't know the joy it gives me.
That in itself, brings a huge smile, because it's like, it's an affirmation.
That's amazing.
And it's
amazing. It's amazing.
So what has she taught you? What's the one thing that you would say she's taught you?
I think when she was born and we found out, when you find out what she has, you're in despair. You're in despair and you think, what happened? But I remember a teacher of mine, he's phenomenal too. And he taught me a dua that had been taught to him by a lady in Jeddah, which says, I'll try and translate it in English. It says, Ya Allah, I don't ask you to change your decree, but I want you to show me the lutf, basically the pearl in the oyster. And that took me forward. And Sophia taught me that life's little things don't matter. What matters is how you made somebody feel. Sophia makes us feel phenomenal in absolutely everything. Every day she wants to hear a story. So the other day she said, Nani, can you tell me about Asya? Asya is my youngest. She's one of the most phenomenal human beings I know. Anyway, everybody says that about their children. But I said, well, when Asya was little, in the summer, she took me to a store and she said she wanted to buy a fur coat. And the coat was £99 and I couldn't afford it. But she insisted she wanted it, so we bought it for her. And I was telling Sophia this, and I said, when we got home, Sophia, she said she didn't want it. And Sophia taught me something I will never forget. This was only a few weeks ago. And she said, Nani, and this, remember, keep in mind that for her, a sentence takes her at least half an hour. But on her device, she said, Nani, maybe she was cold in the store. So she found an excuse to make somebody good, regardless of what they did. And she does that for everything. And that taught me a lesson I will never forget. Like you said, to see the silver lining, to see the goodness in everyone.
Yeah, it depends what glasses you're wearing.
That's what Sophia teaches me every day, every single day.
Wow. I mean, I'm amazed that human beings who are able to take a situation and flip it in a way that makes them see the beauty of God in everything.
Isn't that what life's about?
That is what life is about. I wish more people could speak in this language. Going back to Q City, I think the more I'm hearing about it, the more I think now I can see it in this manner, because I've gone through my journey as well, that you've actually used neurolinguistic programming basically within your teachings, which is so powerful, because I think that is what actually programs the child's mind in a way that uses, all of our senses in every way, and that's phenomenal that you've used, even the way that you I remember the way you teaching the names and the numbers of the surahs as well. Maida 5 and all of that. I remember everything. 12, the 12 children, and the way that you've used neurolinguistic. Was that on purpose?
I trained to do psychotherapy. So when I got married and we came here, I started psychotherapy, and I used to work with Dr. Bernardes. I only left my studies because somebody had to work. He was studying. Somebody had to work, and I went into banking. But that had a profound effect on me from that when I was younger, because you saw the difference, just how some words made a difference to children who were traumatized. Dr. Bernardes at that time in Essex had children who had come from broken homes, who were abused, who were beaten up. But it only took sitting with them for a few minutes, a few hours, to change their perspective. So I think at the back of your head, all that training that you had comes back, and you want to use that. Because in essence, all our souls have been traumatized. Yes. Because we're living in a country which is very different from the values we hold. We're living in a community that is still, and we're getting better, but we're still very traditional. We still butt in. We still do that.
Yeah. Again, it's all programming again, isn't it? And it's, it's because we have come from that culture, that has taught us. Yes. And I think, I was thinking about this, and I think that that was the only way at the time, was to just go through the robotic system of learning by heart and knowing by heart, because we didn't know any better. So I guess at that time it was good, it served us. But then, just like anything else, we have to let go and bring new things, isn't it? And it's hard to kind of go through that change again. The word change has come up a lot.
I think so.
And so I can appreciate where it's coming from, but I think it's just taking everybody on a journey. So Q City, are you planning to actually build an actual city? Like, in Dubai, you have all these amazing places.
We have various countries, and I say countries, who've asked us to build Quran City.
Yeah.
I hold back at the moment for various reasons. Although Canada is doing an exhibition in November, I think, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the Wiladat of the Prophet. So Mark, which is the Mullah Askar Center, they're actually building it's beautiful how they've worked it out. They've got a group of young people who've taken Quran City and they're building an exhibition based on it.
Wow.
I would rather it was done by our community first before any other community. The communities who want to build Quran City, or the countries that want to build Quran City, I don't think they have the same ethos as the Ahlul Bayt goes for me. So I'm resisting a little bit. But right now, this is good. Mark is doing a good job.
I mean, something is better than nothing in that way.
Yeah. But you might end up wanting to give in because they want to build a city, as you said.
Yeah.
And it works.
And how do you ensure that it stays authentic? Because obviously, when you pass it on, there's their filters, other people's filters that change and distorts things.
This is God's book. It's not mine. He protects it. I just initiate a journey, like you said, your journeys. You initiate something. It's not up to me to protect it. There's no such thing as a copyright on God's book. So you see people who have made things out of it, made different things, and you smile and you watch it, because I think it's phenomenal. I think young people have a different outlook on things. Unless they're going way out, which they can't, because this is his book, he will bring them back. You just watch it and you smile. What I resent, and the only thing I resent out of this, is if they copy it and then they put their mark on it and say copyright. That's when I object. But otherwise, I don't say anything. Why would I? It's not my book. These are not my Ahlul Bayt. It's not my Quran. It's nothing to do. It's ours. And it's wonderful to see young people go way ahead and change it.
Yeah. And have new understandings, maybe.
Absolutely.
Because it's
Absolutely.
like an ocean, each sentence, each word, each letter, isn't it?
I agree.
It's amazing when you hear from a different perspective something that you've never heard before. It's beautiful.
I agree. Amazing.
Excellent. Wow. Well, I look forward to seeing that city or that exhibition at some point.
You can come with that as soon as it's done. I will send you the stuff for it, but they're doing a wonderful job.
Perfect. What would you say is the most important life lesson? Like, if there was one thing that you would say, right, this is it, what would that be?
What sort of life lesson are you looking for? Religious?
Anything.
I think the most important life lesson is to be able to have rahmah, to be kind in all situations. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter how it is. If you can manage that, I think you've made it. You've just made it. I don't think anything else compares to compassion. And that is why every sentence, every surah of the Quran starts with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And that is why the Prophet is known as Rahmatul lil Alameen. I don't think anything beats compassion. And I think when you look at life without compassion, you lose it. You absolutely lose it. That's the biggest life lesson I've learned from life as itself. And like I said, I'm 65. I've had 12 children. I've lost 7. I have 9 grandchildren. I mean, these are the joys of my life. I belong to a community that you belong to as well, which is absolutely phenomenal. And all I can say is that community has taught me kindness. They're just phenomenal.
Yeah. Golden nuggets. This is, everyone make note of this. Wow. Excellent. Is there anything I haven't asked you?
I like that. I think
there's so much in you.
No, there's not much in me. I think one of the things that is important for our community to do, there's a couple of things. One of them is Cupid, which you were part of as well. And I think you were busy, so you left. But Cupid starts from QPID, obviously.
I love that name.
Yeah. It's matchmaking is really important. Yes. In previous times, people used to look out for each other and do something about it, especially in the center. The center you visited did things for it. We have a phenomenal matchmaker called Sabi. I think you know her. She's your cousin.
I think I do know her.
She's just somebody amazing. And I learned from, the little ones teach you a lot. But it is the community. And she was telling me, we don't need Cupid and Paris Omianti because, we have sessions where we can sort this out as a community. So I think Cupid is an important part of community, which you haven't asked, where we need to look out for each other. And the people who register with Cupid, they're those who are the good people. Yeah. They don't go out partying and finding people. They rely on the community to do it for them. Yes, and I think that's something we need to look at. And the second thing is, I think, who we bring as speakers to the community. Now, normally when I say this, I'm told it's because you want to speak. I don't. I'm speaked out, if you know what I mean.
I mean,
But I think speakers in the community or sit on the member, because the public listen to them. It's like gospel, So they must be those who actually care for the community, who actually know the traumas that this particular community is going through and how to be able to heal those traumas. I don't think talking about dates and incidents and what you can Google is as important as the traumas the community is going through. So these are these are community things that I think maybe you didn't ask, but I'm just saying these are my thoughts.
Yes.
And I think they're really important.
I wanted to ask you actually about Cupid. Cupid is, first of all, the name is super attractive.
I love it.
I love the name. Second of all, how is it that, we have so many people of our community are going outside of the community when it comes to marriage, when it comes to looking for a spouse? What would you say?
Well, let me tell you how Cupid started, so you know what it was.
Yes, please share
So Cupid
with us.
started with 2 incidents. One incident was when one night there were 2 young ladies from the community who had married not only out of the community, but out of the religion as well. So they had married Hindus, I think. And I remember speaking to them because they came home to do their nikah first at home. And then they went to their own, the way they did it with their husbands. And I remember asking them, but why? Have you not thought about your children? They'll be torn apart. And they said, the community failed us. So that was one. The second was this young lady whom, as an independent matchmaker out of Cupid, I had introduced her to someone. And I remember sitting with her. It was a wiladat. I think it was the wiladat of Sayyidah Zainab. And she was sitting next to me. And I said to her in Gujarati, why are you ringa-ringaing? You know what ringa-ringaing means? It's why are you being such a, fusspaw? He ticks all these boxes, I mean, for God's sakes, what more do you want? So she said, Aunty, I'm so excited. Tonight, after the wiladat, we're going to call them and say, yes. As she's sitting there, an announcement was made that he was getting engaged to somebody else. So she collapsed on my lap and she burst into tears. And I remember that night, that wiladat saying, Sayyidah Zainab, we need to do something about this. This is not going to happen again. I did go up to the mother and I said, the least you could do is to let her know. So she said exactly the same thing. I think she said she was, yesing and knowing and umming and eyeing. And I said, but the least you could do is let her know you can't do this. But it fell to deaf ears. Anyway, history showed something else. Regardless, that was the birth of Cupid at the breakfast table, where we thought we're going to start something where we would get these matchmakers together. We had all independent matchmakers. And because nobody knew what the other person was doing, some people were shopping. They would go to 5 matchmakers and get 5 different people. While this way, we have a central database and we're able to all see what's happening. So you couldn't go to different matchmakers and say, you know what, I want to see someone, and they wouldn't show you that we'd be one at a time. So that's basically how Cupid started as such. And it's doing okay. We're running out of ideas, but we try whatever we can do.
Does such a matchmaking system work in today's day and age where social media and all of that, how are you moving it with the times?
It still works because what we do is we have events. So we'd have a charity event where they would come, sort out clothes. We've had that before. They sat there. out of these events, we get a lot of matches because people who've never seen each other are able to see each other. Yes, we have to comply with Sharia because you have to have older people around and all the rest of it who are managing it and all that. So we try to be part of that. Another methodology we use is we have girls sitting, say, in a massive circle, the boys being able to talk to them for 3 minutes each, very respectfully. We're all there watching this. And that seems to work as well. I get told that, you're doing halal speed dating. And I just look at it and I say, okay, it's working.
You can call it what you want.
Yeah, it's one Muslim meeting another Muslim, and it's really important. To me, it's really important that here, in this particular place, Cupid, or in matchmaking, culture is quite important. And so it's nice to see KHOJAs marrying KHOJAs as such.
Yes,
but when you have a Shia marrying a Shia, that's good enough too.
Of course.
As long as they're Shias, that's fine. I'll not go outside that realm very much. But we try.
Yeah.
We try. And again, it was wonderful when, is it Dr. Datu? When he was president. He was absolutely awesome. He was the only president who agreed to take Cupid under the wing of London Jamaat. That helped because it gave it a little bit of credibility. So we could hold things in the center, albeit with working around Sharia. But people like Sultan Bai Gawani, it's amazing person. Zareen Badani, these Fatma Barwani, these elders as you have. And then you have the young one like Mansoura Barwani and Fof Virani. And I have never seen people so amazing. When you have the old and the young, all striving.
Working together.
It's amazing. It's just amazing.
So what's the future of Cupid now? Are you planning different other things? And also, did you look at how sort of from our faith, how the Ahlul Bayt used to do it? Did you look, as you're very curious, you look at all these things.
Oh, definitely.
Knowing you, I'm sure you would have looked at the strategies that they would have used into implementing here. How did that?
Definitely. See, the problem with culture is that we tend to go towards culture too much. Religion is something completely different. And the Ahlul Bayt worked like that. If you look at the mothers of all the Aimma, most of them anyway, I'm not looking at the first few, look at them. There was somebody who came from Morocco, there was somebody who came from Egypt, somebody, wherever they were. And it didn't really matter. So opening ourselves to that, and I'm contradicting myself when I said KHOJA is good, but they used that system a lot. They were very open-minded. Their mothers were very righteous. I find that a little bit difficult. When I look at it, I find that very difficult. Very, very difficult. Whether it's me getting old or whether it's because with experience, I see how cultural differences cause fracas in a marriage. I don't know. Maybe I'm sure that the Aimma were, and I know for a fact, that they had much more compassion than we do to allow that. I have a phenomenal daughter-in-law. She comes from Lahore. She comes from Pakistan. Zunaira is just something else. I cannot say how awesome this young lady is. She's been married to my son for many, many years. But when he first said he wanted to get married to her, lots of things kicked in because she wasn't a KHOJA. She wasn't.
For you or for everyone else?
I think a lot for my husband, and therefore it rubbed off a little bit. But it's different. It's a different. He loves her to bits, and what makes me happy is watching him when he sees her, his eyes light up, and that's enough for me. But there is a difference in culture. There is a difference in culture. Culture is different. So I think at 65, you look back and you want your community to stay with your community.
I think what you're saying is a very important point because a lot of people think that celebrating your community and being proud of your being who you are, because there is a reason why God has made us into nations and tribes. So it's not so that we become tribal, but it's more so that we can celebrate that and learn from each other. And And I think that's a concept that we need to really take on board and not shy away from. And what you're saying, I resonate with 100%.
Absolutely. He says, Ya ayyuhan nas, are human beings, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. We have created you from one man and one woman. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. And made you into these different communities and tribes, as you call them, لِتَعَارَفُوا. So you recognize each other's. I mean, it would be boring if we were all the same. And I think we've got to be fiercely proud of being KHOJA Shia Ithna Ashris. And we've got to hold on to this community.
Yeah. I mean, like you said before, it's a beautiful community.
Absolutely.
We have so much going for us. We have so much talent, so many skills, so much going for us. We just have to just be proud and look at what's going right rather than what's going wrong.
And I think encourage those who are doing it, you know, who do anything. Just pull them up, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. And marriages, you know, going back into Cupid, it's hard. It's a hard institution. Some people even say it's a gamble. You know, you either fall on the right, on the wrong, whatever. But what would you say is something, you know, for couples to keep in mind when they're choosing a partner?
I think at the moment, the problem we have is the men do not want to commit. And the women feel that they're better off independent. So that's just a general view. But to be together, there's a lot of sacrifice. It's not easy. Marriage has never been easy. I don't think anybody will tell you it's easy. Maybe the first few months, years, maybe a bit of a...
I think it's harder. The first 2 years are the hardest.
I don't know. Maybe you're living in this cuckoo land, you know, of roses and flowers and chocolates and whatever it might be. But it's not easy. It's a lot of sacrifice. But you're creating a family, you know, you're creating a unit, and it's just phenomenal. And I think we're becoming, I don't know, we want an angel to come down from the heavens. We want, as far as men go, they want somebody who's eye candy, but also somebody who's like their mom. You know, who can build a family. As for the women, they're obviously looking for somebody like their father, but they're looking for somebody who will give them the independence they have. Once you become a wife, and a mother in particular, you're a mother. There's no such thing as me time. A mom is a mom is a mom. You know, that's basically where it stands. And I think once we adopt that, once we realize that, we'll be good. And I think for two people not to control each other is also quite important.
I think I was reading a book called Getting the Love You Want by Dr. Hendricks. And in there, he says that you choose a partner that you feel familiarity with because you would have seen that trait in your father or mother or a guardian. And you are you don't know, but you're automatically attracted to that. And then you go through this period, which is the honeymoon period, which, you know, it's almost like God has numbed us so that we can, you know, be attracted. And then suddenly the numbness goes, and, you know, you're not, you're feeling the feelings. And there's a whole sort of art of communication there, which perhaps our community needs to maybe adopt. That there's ways to talk, there's ways to interact with each other from the beginning and throughout.
But I think a lot of the onus is on the men. If we look at all the ahadith, they will tell you the older one. When I say the older one, the one who's got a higher status, not a higher status, let me say the dominant status, is the one who initiates it. I look at my family and I look at my husband, and I think his attitude runs through everyone else. When we sit on a dinner table, he will listen to everyone. It doesn't mean that you condone it, but you will listen to it. And he will not allow anybody to shout, because he says, how far are we? And he will not allow any bad language. And he doesn't impose. It's just the way he does things. And I think that is really important. If the men in our community would stop, and I'm sorry, I'm being very feministic here. If the men in the community will stop being chauvinistic, will stop being, I want this and I want that, and follow the way of the Prophet, which was completely different, lives would be so much better. I would not see women coming home petrified of their husbands. It's this control issue.
Yeah.
And they've got to learn that's not what Islam is about.
Well, a lot of them needs to see therapists, but but I think what you're saying,
it's really
makes
important.
Sense. It's the need of a woman is to be cared for and to be loved.
Yes.
And when you understand the core need of a woman, it's not that hard to please her.
No, it's not. All you need to give her is respect and love. That's it. And if you can do that, she'll be all yours. And this control issue, when I talk on the minbar and I say, the Prophet said, she doesn't have to cook for you. She doesn't have to clean for you. In fact, she doesn't even have to nurse your children. And they say, oh my goodness, you're spoiling our girls. It's not spoiling, it's the truth. They will do it anyway, out of love.
Yeah, and I think if I'm only guessing here, I can't say what was in the mind of the Prophet when he said that. But I think the reason why he would have said that is to show that it's a choice, and it's not that you don't have to do it. It's you choose to do or not to do, and that's okay either way. But if you did it, and if you were asked with love, and if you did it together as a team, then that's better.
Absolutely.
And we can only guess, obviously, but these are sort of the logic that comes to mind when we think about
everything,
these things,
and I go back to it. The only thing that you need is compassion in life. You just have a little bit of compassion for the person in front of you.
Yeah.
Life's good.
What message would you give the viewers who are wanting to get into Cupid or who's looking to use matchmaking as a way to find a spouse? What advice would you give a girl and what advice would you give a boy?
Register with us. We have some phenomenal matchmakers. Don't have preemptive thoughts. Someone is this or everybody. And I see these people. I see 28 phenomenal human beings who wake up in the morning, think about matchmaking, sleep at night, think about matchmaking. You cannot get human beings like that. Just, go for it. Do it. As far as boys are concerned, why are you so scared of commitment? What's wrong? What's wrong with you? And as far as girls are concerned, for God's sakes, don't be so picky. Don't be so picky. He'll be fine. If he has a few basic, use what the Prophet said. He's got a good family. Mom is good. Mom is really important. Mom is good. He can financially support you. He's something that you wouldn't mind waking up to in the morning. Good enough. It's not going to be whatever. He's an Ahlul Bayti. Khalas. What else do you want? Everything else will really fall into place. And like the Prophet said, if you ask somebody about him and they said that he talks with respect, khalas, that's it.
Yeah.
Especially when you ask him about his mom.
Yes.
The first question they should ask is not about how much do you earn and where you're going to live and blah, 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 blah. Ask him, what do you think of your mom? And if he can say some good things about his mom, you're done. Because if he can respect the womb that bore him, he will respect his wife.
That's really, really profound, actually.
I think it's...
Yes, 100%.
It's life, isn't it?
And anyone, I think for whoever is looking to get into that space of marriage, I think it's important that everybody wants to be heard, understood and seen, whether you're on this side or that side. And that's really important from both sides to understand that just the way you want to be understood and seen, right, the other does as well. So have that mutual respect. So thank you. That was really, really interesting.
Thank you.
Going on the point that you mentioned about the minbar and the speakers, and what do you think should be broadcasted, if I can use that word, from the minbar? Because it's a very, I think something, I feel like when somebody sits on a minbar, suddenly the aura changes, something happens to that person. Yes. I'm sure you would know. You've sat on them. I've never sat on one, obviously, but you would have, so you would know some. It's like maybe I can see that some transformation happening. So what do you think should be broadcasted?
Well, there are two things that I have an opinion on. And again, this is my 2 pennies worth. Whenever I ask different communities as to their choice of speakers, why they've picked a particular speaker, and even when I get invited, I ask, why me? Why did you ask me? Very often I get the reply that this person needs to speak. It's not about the person. It's about the community they're speaking to. When I ask them, why did you ask me to speak? Because I don't even know your community. I'd rather know your community before I speak to them. So I'll repeat exactly what I said before. When they do go on the minbar to speak, there is a transformation in that minbar has something about it. But if you don't know your audience, it's not going to work. It's really not going to work. You need to know them. You need to feel for them. When I go to communities outside and I speak and I come out and I may sit down and talk to them, but I don't understand them. I don't understand their marriage problems. I don't understand the problems they face in raising their children. I don't understand their interactions because I don't know them. So I have always believed, and I believe this a lot, that the speakers that we have in our community must be community orientated. They must be of our own community. I know that all the institutions, whether it's a World Federation or KHOJA or the Jamaats, invite outside speakers. And to me, they don't know us. We have phenomenal speakers in our community. Whether you're looking at, all the speakers we have, they're phenomenal. And they really belong to us. Why would we send them away?
So you mean from our community?
Definitely, from the community they come from. I mean, if you look at the speakers we have within our community, whether you look at Sheikh Anwar Jafar at the moment, who knows our community, or you look at Abbas Jafar or whoever, whatever. Naming people is not the right thing. And even within the ladies, you've got Master Hassan, for example. These are speakers who know the community, and they will be able to, when they talk to them, whether it is in Muharram or whatever days that are important, those people will come to them and they will be a continuous connection with them. But when you have outsiders, I go outside and I speak, I don't have much connection with them. They do call me, but I don't understand them.
Yeah. Do you think, though, there's a value sometimes to have different perspectives, especially because now we live in an Instagram world where we see clips of this and that, and maybe inspirational. It's nice sometimes. They say sometimes when it's your parents telling you don't hear it, but some outsiders tells you the same thing, and suddenly it just has a different meaning together. So, is there a value sometimes to bring a different perspective, or is that not?
You already have that value because you have your device with you. It's already on YouTube, already on Instagram or whatever. You have all these speakers there. But in those important days like Muharram, if you had your own speakers, the audience will connect with them on a physical basis. I agree with looking at a different perspective, but I don't think anything beats that face-to-face communication with them. And that only comes when you sit on the minbar and you've got your own people in front of you and they will come to you.
You build that trust.
Look at the Masumin. They never had outside speakers in. They spoke to their communities. So if I agree, different perspectives, but in today it's so much easier. That used to be the case years ago when you didn't have access to them. Today, I mean, in Muharram at night, I can flick my YouTube or to 100 different Jamaats and pick the one I like.
Yeah, that's a way of looking at it, definitely.
My perspective. My 2 pennies worth.
I love that. We're sharing perspectives. That's the whole point of this podcast, actually, is to learn and grow through different conversations. The last question I want to ask you, Aunty, is this podcast, when we were looking at naming it, the one, obviously, KHOJA, which is an important word, and the second word is connection, because one of the things that perhaps we're lacking and we want to build and strengthen is connection. What does connection mean to you?
My goodness, it means a lot. If you look at the imams, that you look at the 10th imam or the 11th imam, in preparation for the coming of Imam Zaman Ajalallah Faraja, they built connections. So they made sure that there was a network, even if it was through butter sellers that went through every house and got people together. I love the word connections because it is so important at the moment. And again, this is a feeling I have. We have all these different sections, and Marhum Laskar tried to build them together with the WF. KHOJA tried to bring the Jamaats together. But we need more interaction. We need more interaction with the different Jamaats. We need more of a sit down and talk together. And just people. And you know what? You're a chair lady, right? In the mosque, for God's sakes, let us talk.
Yes.
That is connections.
Actually, you say that today as I was coming out, senior citizens, one lady said, can we have socializing time?
Yes.
And I think that
is what you're talking about. That's connection.
That's true connection.
That's connection. And that's what you need.
That's what you need.
That's basically what you need. Cut down the majlis time by half. Let them talk.
Yeah. Good. No, absolutely. Aunty, it's been a pleasure, a real good insight into your life and who you are. I've learned so much today. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for your time and for all the insights.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. This is the KHOJA Connection podcast, growing through conversations. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, press the notification button so that you can get all of our podcasts. And they are one after another, amazing, exciting conversations.